The two accounts we're going to look at, we're looking at an asset, an accounts receivable. They owe us $500. And the new account that we're learning about is called the allowance for doubtful accounts. And you need to know that that's a contra asset. It's going to have a normal credit balance versus a normal debit balance to offset what's happening in the asset. I add a Marsism to this account. The allowance for doubtful accounts, we're hopeful. We're hopeful that even though we're doubting that they're going to pay us, we're hopeful that we could recover that. But the reality exists, and then we're probably not going to get $25 out of our $500. I don't know the percentage, and we're going to analyze percentages in the 4th section of the chapter. But out of our $500 of ARs that are floating out there, like helium balloons, 25 of them are going to lose, $25 of them are going to lose helium. We're probably not going to be able to recover 25 out of that 500. Does that make sense? Okay. So these are like the balloons, all these AR balloons floating. Instead of just throwing a dart at them saying we're probably not going to get them, 25 of them are going to just lose helium, and the ones that are hanging on the floor. But we're still hopeful that we could recover that. Don't write this, but this is what it would look like on a balance sheet. Our accounts receivable are only valued at $475 because of this contra account. We probably won't get those $25 worth of helium balloons back because they're going to float or pop. Another way to look at it would be just a one-line item. I like the other way better. We'll get into presentation analysis in the 4th section. All the IOUs, all the customers who have charged us or charged to us. We've sold something to them. Are we going to sue them right away? Probably not. We're going to probably call them. We're going to send some written notification. We're going to call them again. And then we'd probably send it off to a collection agency. Yes, yes. Mitchell's asking the question, is there ever a time? Yeah, actually all the time. There's a percentage of people who just really won't pay. Oh yeah, yep. And then and I'm going to teach this hopefully by the end of the hour, we enter in what's called a factor. It's an entity that's going to buy our debt from us, and then we get some of our money recovered, and then it's in their court, or like a collection agency. Okay. And when we're dealing with $500, not a big deal if 25 don't pay us, but when we're dealing with $500 billion and 25 don't pay us, that's a big deal. It's very time consuming, it's very grueling, but at the end of the day, we want to get our money out of these ARs. But the reality is, some of the balloons get popped, and we just eat that. And it's up to our AR department to have healthy relationships with these people. Yeah. Go to the next set of handouts that I gave you today. We're going to talk about all the journal entries for uncollectible accounts. Remember, there's two approaches here. We can write them off. That's like popping the balloon. Or we can have the allowance method, where that's like just letting some of the air out of the balloon. It's still kind of floating around in hopes that we can recover it and put air back in. Okay, so these are the journal entries, and we're going to start just going through them. Okay, but just know when it comes to uncollectible, there's two methods, the write-off method and the allowance method. Which does GAAP like? Because we're just letting some of the air out. We might let them sit and linger. We're going to let them linger. We're not going to pop them and say we're done with you, in hopes of inflating them again. And I know the balloons it's not my idea. It's the book to present it that way, and it makes so much sense. Imagine a company holding a bunch of helium balloons. That's all people that owe you money. We're not going to throw darts at those folks or just write them off if they're not going to pay. We're just going to let some of the air out, let them linger. That's the allowance method. Okay, so let's take a look at what a journal entry would look like if we write them off. That's the first one on that page 4. Circle the word write off. The write-off method is one of them. Remember, that is a dart to a balloon. The balloon signifies an AR, and we're going to throw a dart at it. We're writing them off. The balloon is gone. What does the journal entry look like? Let's read it. Assume that Warden Company writes off M.E. Doran's $200 balance as uncollectible. Okay, there's another approach we can take with uncollectible, and it's the allowance method, but it looks like we're dart. Done. What does the journal entry look like there? We are adding a new account called the bad debt expense. It's a debit to the bad debt expense and a credit to M.E. Doran AR. You mean to tell me they get off that easy? We're just going to say, you know what, M.E. Doran, we're done with you. You don't owe us the money anymore. And we're just going to eat that $200 as a business expense. That's what write-off is. So, and you might want to write this in. Here was the original AR. They had a balance of 200. To write them off, we're just going to say, yep, we're going to make you a 0. Say minus 200, you no longer owe us. And we're going to debit to bad debt expense, and that's just part of doing business. Yes. How do you sign up to be him? You know what? You don't want to be him because he's running around with bad credit. And if this M.E. Doran continues in this path, eventually karma sets in and no one will allow him to charge money. So it might be fun one time or 2 times, but karma's going to catch up to him. I wouldn't suggest going this route. Okay. What questions do you have about this? Because this is as simple as a write-off is. You write off the AR. We expense out. And this is an expense to us. It's just like paying the utility bill. Or it's just like paying advertising. This is an expense. An expense of doing business with bad eggs. Do you think you'd want to have this part of your normal business expense list? No. Because that, now imagine if we'd add, million or billion to this. Ouch. So what does this look like? Let's just keep going. Recording estimated uncollectibles. Let's look at this. Hampson Furniture has credit sales of 1.2 million. Wow. Of which 200,000 remains uncollected at the end of the year. So they've had sales of 1.2 million. I'd write all my little notes in. But at the end of the year, 200,000 of that is going to be uncollected. Okay, so if you think of it this way, they've had 1.2 million in sales that have been charged. Okay, 100,000 were paid off. Okay, yippee skippy. And at the end of the year, 200,000 still remains. Do you think we can try to track those people down? Yeah, we can call them, we can send them written notification. But then the credit manager, the person behind the desk, like managing all of this mess, estimates, now this is an estimate, that of that 200,000, 12,000 will prove uncollectible. Like we're going to work really, 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 really hard to get a lot of our money back, and they did. You know, if we'd subtract off 12,000, we're looking at what, 78,000. That credit manager worked his or her tail off to, I don't know if it's 78,000. We'll just go with it. Okay. That credit manager worked, called, emailed, sent messages feverishly to recover this much. But you know what? At the end of the day, he or she is estimating that out of that 1.2 million, 12,000 are just not going to get. Are we going to write them off? Bad debt expense, 12 grand. Allowance for doubtful accounts, 12 grand. This is not the write-off method because we are allowing, not writing off. We could throw a dart at those $12,000 worth of balloons and just say we're done with you, but we're hopeful that we're going to go into the next year and work even harder to get those recovered. We may not. GAAP likes this version better. Notice it's basically the same transaction, bad debt expense, just like paying the light bill. We're paying 12 grand to just have these ARs run around and run away from us. But instead of AR being credited, that's the DART, we're having the allowance for doubtful accounts because we are hopeful. GAAP likes that we're hopeful too, that we can go into the next fiscal period maybe really hoping to get those recovered, allowing it to happen. Because if we throw a dart and we say AR credit, we're not allowing it to happen. Do you need sheets, Garner? Can you hand these to Garner? Do you see the difference? What's it look like? What's it look like on a balance sheet again? Again, AR of 12 grand. Really, they're valued at 188 because some credit manager, and I'd write these in. You have this on your notes, don't you? Some credit manager estimated that out of that 200,000 that's still owed, 12 grand aren't going to pay us. I thought we had 1.2 million in credit sales. Well, throughout the year they paid them off. Mitchell, question. We're done with you. Because remember, an allowance for doubtful, we're hoping, we're crossing our fingers that we can get it. We're still hopeful. Because if you throw a dart at a balloon, can you ever put air back in that balloon? Right. Because that's an option. We could say we're done with you. Some people just don't want to deal with it. Yep. And you're going to find out in a little bit, we're going to end up writing off some of our allowance for doubtfuls because we just can't get our money. But when you throw a balloon at a dart, or I said that backwards, when you throw a dart at a balloon, you can't ever recover it. But when you let just a little bit of air out and say, we're kind of done with you for a while, you $12,000 worth, we still could inflate that balloon again. Okay. Okay, let's keep reading. Still the Hampson furniture. The vice president of finance. So now the credit manager is saying, I've tried and tried and tried. I've tried and tried and tried. But now, finance VP, this is in your court. The vice president of finance of Hampson Furniture on March 5th the next year authorizes a write-off. So here's the DART of the $500 balance owed by R.A. Ware. So remember, in 2014, we had the 1.2 million in credit sales. I would assume these are the same numbers. I'm hoping so. Minus, how much did we recover? minus the 188,000 that we recovered, or who paid their bill. So then we were down to 12,000 that were allowed to just be floating. So out of that 12,000, this stinker just was not paying his bill. He was a deflated balloon, not a dart, but now we're throwing the dart at what's left in there, okay? Because we're going to write this guy off. He was in the allowance camp. We didn't write him off because we were super hopeful that we could get it recovered, but we've looked at January, February, now we're into March, and he's not paying. The credit manager's done everything he could and said, VP, make a decision. Are we going to write him off? So what's happening in this one, he was in the allowance camp, that balloon floating down here, but we're like, we're done with you. We're still going to pop that balloon, even though there's not much air in it. So 2 transactions here. I'm sorry, my writing's over there. I can't erase it right now. Maybe it's only 1, sorry. This is a hit to our allowance. It's being debited, and we're writing off the AR. There's bad eggs out there. I hate to break it to you. The world's a cruel place. Yeah. But then guess what that costs? I know. I don't know. This happens. I agree. Mitchell's arguing a valid point. How come we can't take them to court? Time and money. Not necessarily. I mean, what if this guy skipped the country? And they do that too. They do that too. We live in a cruel world. Coral? Yeah, I would say within the company, yes, and you'd report this to this person's credit. It's going to be a big tarnish in their credit. Yep. Now notice, have you seen a theme here? When you write something off, AR goes down. Dart, write off, AR goes down. AR is the credit. Okay, remember this. This is great. This tells the story down here. Remember, allowance for doubtful account is a contra asset with a credit balance. We started January 1 with 12 grand of balloons deflated. We decided to dart this one. This is a X. This is a dart. Okay, so now we still have 11.5 of hopeful. Remember, it's called doubtful, but I'm hopeful. We gave up hope on this guy, though. We threw a dart at him. Okay, keep going. So far, we've had a write-off, and we've had an allowance for doubtful accounts that we hope to recover. But even in the hopeful camp, we can write off and dart them. What's going on now? They found him. Mitchell, they found him. We went through all this work. Our credit manager estimated that 12 grand we just probably weren't going to recover, but we're going to set it aside. Credit manager kept working on in January, February, March, and said, VP, we got to write this guy off. He probably skipped the country. But Mitchell's argued point comes back. What's happening on July 1? Who showed up at our door with a check? This guy. R.A. Ware, who we previously had written off, knocks on our door and says, sorry, here's my money. I tried to run. It caught up with me. Here's my money. Mitchell. because he's gone. Yep, those two transactions were just showing the difference between here's a write-off and here's an allowance. Okay, the allowance happened, but then this RA where on March 1st we said, we're done with you. We're throwing a dart at your little meandering balloon on the floor. I don't have it in front of me, but we had our allowance basket. Yep, yep. We're writing off an allowance. Now guess who's back a couple of months later? He skipped the country. I don't know what RA Wares did. He was running from his problems. And the point that Mitchell just was arguing, can't we take him to court? Can't we find him even if he goes to Canada? Well, he showed up. We wrote him off. We've spent a lot of money and a lot of effort to write him off, but he's back. Are we going to say, sorry, RA Wares, we are not taking your money? No, we're probably going to take his money. And it's a whole hullabaloo of work. Because now we have two transactions because we have to first reopen his account. How annoying is that? We have to reopen a previous DART, or in other words, what we wrote off. I'm going to just say write off. Like, thank you, RA Wares, for all of the extra work you've put us through. We put you in an allowance basket. Your balloon was floating around on the ground, and then a couple of months later we threw a dart at it because we were done with you. Before we can take your money, we have to reopen your account. So now AR is going to go back up because he technically didn't owe us, but now he owes us again. And then we have to put more money back in the allowance for doubtful. And then we can turn around and take his $500 cash and quickly repay the bill. So it's a wham wham because now AR went down. We had to first reopen his account so we could pay the account. So here's to reopen and then here's to pay. Do you think we'll do business with RA Wares again? Like Coral asked, do we kind of publicly know about him? Yeah, we do. Internally, we definitely don't want to do business with this gentleman again unless he shows up with a pile of cash. And we probably want to tell others in the credit industry that, hey, this guy strung us along for probably over a year. Because now we're already halfway through 2000, let's just say 15. What? This is just one of how many customers. Let's go back to GE and Ford. Roughly 50% of their assets are tied up in balloons floating around that hopefully are going to come pay their bill. They might deflate. We might pop them. They might show back up. I mean, imagine a multi-billion-dollar industry here with all these balloons. Yikes. Do you feel like you understand the process? It's a messy, dirty process. But businesses in the multi-million, billion-dollar range are going to do everything they can to get those balloons turned into cash. Because otherwise they're floating. Even if we pop them, we're still going to take the money if they show up. We have to re-inflate them and then re-deflate them. Yikes. What's happening here? A percentage of sales. Let's read this, let's mark it up, and it's actually pretty easy. I think we're moving on to a new business now. So RA Wares and that furniture place, we're moving on to a different one. Assume that Gonzalez Company elects to use what's called the percentage of sales basis. And this is a concept that credit managers can opt to use. It concludes that 1% of the net credit sales will become uncollectible. So you just say, okay, if you have X amount of sales, based on the percentage of sales concept, we're probably not going to get 1 or 2% of them back. They're going to be deemed uncollectible. So what would it look like? Bad debt expense of $8,000. Whoa, where'd we get that number? Sales times are, right, but I'm just saying sales times our percentage of uncollectible times 1% or times 0.01. So it's the same concept. We're not writing off. We're not writing off. Rather, we're using the allowance because we're hopeful. It's still a credit to this allowance for doubtful, but instead of the credit manager saying we're probably not going to get 12 grand, like out of the 1.2 million and down to the 188 from before, they're using some actual math to determine this. They're saying, okay, we're going to just assume, instead of assuming 12 grand is not recoverable, that we're going to put into this allowance, we're going to actually use math. This is the math version of it. We're going to actually use 1%. 1% is our number. If we had $800,000 in sales, credit sales that is, not cash, credit sales, we're not going to get 1% of that back. Where did we get that number? Historically, that's what it's been. I like this version a little bit better because even when years fluctuate, we've got a lot of credit sales or not so many, probably 1% of them we're not going to get back. Then you take a look at something like this. This is not in your notes. Here's all of our customers, our AR customers. And then you know what happens? As we get to number of days past due, we're going to crank up that percentage like a lot. Like here, they're using 2%. So we had 2% of 27,000 that we're probably not going to recover. Then as it starts getting longer out there, like 30 to 60 days past due, 60 to 90, or even over 90, if someone hasn't paid their bill for 90 days, they're using a math number to say 40% of that we're probably not going to recover. Just so you can see how it plays out over time. Mitchell, do you still have a question? Okay. Is this on your notes? Is this thing in there? I'm just wondering why it's not there. Assume the adjustment shows. Oh, we're not going to. Yeah, let's just skip that one. Hopefully I won't regret that. Okay, so then as this question is proposing, okay, what do you do if you've tried and tried and tried to recover an AR? Like you've called, you've sent the written notice, it's called again. You keep trying and trying. It's that 30 to 60, 60 to 90. It's well over a half a year overdue. You can sell the bad debt. Kind of weird, but you can sell the bad debt to someone called a factor. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Is there any room for this in your notes? Okay, I want you to, on the bottom of page 6, put some of this down in your notes. We can sell bad receivables. The reason, there's two. The two major reasons we can sell these to someone else to deal with. Selling them might be the only way we can recover any cash because they might not ever pay us. If they're never going to pay us, even if we have to sell them for way less than what these people owe us or have fees associated, at least we can recover some cash. And these two, it's very expensive and it's very time consuming to keep hounding these bad eggs. Someone has to be making the calls and doing the paperwork, and that someone is getting paid. and we may have to go to court, which is going to be very expensive, as Mitchell was asking. So the reason that companies decide we're done with these bad receivables, at least if we sell them, we're going to get some cash out of the deal, and we're sick of the time-consuming cost involved with this. Who do we sell them to? They're called factors. We sell an AR to a factor. Well, who in the world is a factor? Usually a bank or like a collection agency where they exist to go around and collect bad debt, knock on doors, find them in other countries, whatever they got to do. What they do, factors, so banks or these collection agencies buy these bad receivables from businesses, and then they go collect the money. It's not free. These factors typically charge a commission, and they have fees. So they're just gonna, it's kind of like someone buying a crappy car from us. We're gonna get a little bit of money out of the deal. They're gonna go fix that car and maybe resell it or get, do something with it. They're gonna make money off of it. We're gonna get a little bit of money out of the deal, at least it's some cash. So what's the set of journal entries to sell our stuff to factors, which I assume is our next couple transactions. Do you have this in your notes? Okay. Assume that Hendron Furniture factors $600,000 of their receivables to a business called Federal Factor. Okay. So what's another word for factors in this case? Assume that Henderson Furniture sells to this bank, if you will. They're going to charge 2% of this, just for doing the dirty work. The journal entry would be these three numbers. How much cash are we going to get? Not 600,000, because they're going to say, we're going to charge you 12 grand for us to do the dirty work here. A service charge expense, you might say, why isn't this miscellaneous? It kind of is. It's called the service charge expense, kind of a weird phrase there. And then the AR is going to go down. We're selling it. We're getting rid of it. We're getting $588,000 out of the deal, but it's going to cost us 12 grand to do it. So you might say, whoa, man up. You can get that 600,000. Maybe we're just really sick of it. And we're going to sell it off and take a $12,000 hit because of it. Why would anyone want that risk? Because some of them are in the business to do that. I mean, there are banks out there that are high-risk banks that are willing to go after these dirty people. Can you imagine, though, working for a place like that? I know. They're making 12 grand off of us. But then they have to go find these people that now owe them $600,000. Why? But you know what? Again, we live in a cruel world. And the need for businesses or factors like this exists. Yikes. This is a random one thrown in. I want to just tell you that there's a random. Anita Ferrari purchases $1,000 of CDs for her restaurant from Karen Kerr Music Company using her Visa, keyword there, Visa, First Bank card. If she buys something on a Visa for $1,000, is it a straight up $1,000 purchase? Nope. If she doesn't pay her bill within X amount of days, why is she only getting $970 in cash? 3% or $30 of that total revenue that came in, she doesn't get to keep. Who gets to keep that? Visa, which is tied to a bank. No, Karen Kerr. Let's see. Anita purchases. Like, so this is this transaction is for Karen Kerr. Remember, we're not worrying about inventory in this whole chapter. We're Karen Kerr. Yeah. Right. So like for Junk by Jenny, I now accept credit cards. So if I sold $1,000 worth of junk, my credit card reader company is going to take, actually it's 4%. So I don't get that $1,000. No, no. So yeah, I mean, when you allow, that's why some places, like say, if to use your to use a credit or debit card, you have to have a minimum like $5 or $10 purchase. Have you seen places like that? Yeah. That's why. Yeah, that's why Colton showed up with a bunch of donuts the other day, because he was at Jerry's and he had to buy so much to be able to even swipe. Because he did. He was handing out donuts to everybody. Yeah, and so places aren't going to let you charge because they're having to take a hit and basically pay Visa to allow that service to be used at their business. They're still taking a hit. Like if you, right, because it's a percentage usually. Yep, or yeah, we only accept Visa here because maybe MasterCard, their percentage of what they take is too high. Yep, I thought too with Junk by Jenny, maybe I should only allow like purchases of $50 or over because I'm taking so much of a percentage hit to allow those smaller sales. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's why the credit card industry is a multi-bajillion dollar industry. Okay. We made it. We made it. So you see why I gave you the handouts? Well, I'll tell you, this is a very journalizing heavy chapter, and I'm hoping, please don't pack up just yet. I'm hoping that when I'm writing and circling and drawing arrows to different things in the transactions, you're doing that same thing. And then you actually put the journal entry in. It's a whole lot of memorizing, can you tell? When are you crediting an AR? When we're writing it off. Or when they paid you, but when they pay you after you've been in the allowance pool and then we've thrown a dart at you, when a previously written off person shows up, Debit to AR so they can open it, and then are we going to allow them to charge anything anymore? No, we're going to quickly let them pay that off. So it's debit, credit, boom, right away. Show up with these 3 things done tomorrow. Homework. I'm going to say this again. Homework. I don't know if I'm going to check it or not. Some of you have a tough track record with this. It's not brief exercises, it's not problems. It's exercise 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. I don't know if they're in the workbook or not. Before I stop my recording, I'm going to say this one more time. This is homework. Would you like a remind sent to you? It is homework, Mr. Hansen.